Welcome to Visuals and Voices animated across the United Arab Emirates and the US. Thank you for joining us. In today's programming, live real-time captioning and American Sign Language interpretations will be available during the program. If you're watching it after the live broadcast, that the services are still available on our website. If you look at the comment bar, link will be there for you to click on and then be able to access the service. My name is Noor Al-Swaidi and I'm an artist and curator based in Abu Dhabi. And it's my pleasure today to be moderating this panel of incredibly talented friends, I will say, family friends. And today we're going to be participating in a talk about storytelling and cross-cultural influences in creative media. That these two projects have originated in both the United Arab Emirates and the UAE. It is part of the Smithsonian Folk Fest. And if you haven't heard about the festival, I do encourage you to go to the website, festival.si.edu, for many programs and future events that will be on that website. With no further ado, I'm going to start introducing our great panel, Dr. Dorian Rogers, poet and founder of Rooftop Rhythms, and author of his new book, Million Mile Stare. And along with his sister, Gabrielle Flood from Connecticut, she's a very talented illustrator who collaborated with Dorian. Hi.
Hello.
And also last but not least, very talented Mohammed Saeed Harab, who's the creator of the animated show Fareed. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for having us.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So we do encourage the audience to get involved and participate with the questions and answer section of the talk later on this evening. But we will start with a very visual interpretation of both projects. First with Mohammed Harab, who will explain a little bit behind the inspiration of his show Fareed, and we will showcase a clip from the animation. And then Dorian and Gabrielle will also explain about their book, Million Mile Stare, how it was the inception of it, and then we'll be sharing bits of the poem and the illustrations from the adult coloring books. So we'll start with Mohammed.
Let's go.
So why
ما نبى حد يدخل علينا والبقر مسدحات والريحة فايحة بصير أسوي ضوء حق الدخول.
صدق لي قالوا اجدر ما يفور الا على ثلاث. يوم نكون كلنا جلوس اخبى منك ما شيء، يوم رواحنا تتخلي بي ذيبه.
So Mohammed, we'll start with you. Now we have just seen this 1-minute clip of many characters from the show Fareed, which the heroines are four grandmothers in their traditional Emirati dress. You see all the different characters of social life, youth, and also the landscape of Dubai, the modern, and even the normal expected what people would assume about Arabia is the desert. So please do tell us more about the inception and the whole county, the season of Fareed that you created.
Noor, I missed the last bit. Can you repeat that?
Yes, I'm asking if you can describe the inception and the process of creating Fareed. Where did the idea come from? And if you can explain the different topics that Fareed investigated through the seasons.
So I just want everyone to know that we in the Arab world grew up watching every country's cartoon. I grew up watching a lot of Japanese cartoon, American cartoons, and Noor, as you know, we grew up, and everybody here probably know that we our upbringing was basically dubbed cartoons. So I used to watch cartoons with that featured sushi, and I did not know what sushi was. I only knew what sushi was 17 years later, and that was part of a cultural exchange where a country is like really portraying its culture in front of you, but we as kids we could not recognize that. And I felt it was very important that I should create a show that can communicate my culture and a slice of society. I grew up in a very male dominant society where media portrayed my fathers and grandfathers, but never mentioned my grandmothers because of the shyness of it all. And I thought it was very important that I need to put these characters, the grandmothers, center stage, because these are the kind of people who will manage to compliment you and insult you in the same sentence, and I love that about them. That's beyond their own physical appearance, wearing the burqa. And the first time I sketched my first character, my mentor, the teacher, thought that I sketched the duck. Like he was like, "Oh, I like this duck. Well, tell me more about this duck." I was like, "That's not a duck. That's my grandmother." He was like, "Oh, but then why is she covering her face?" And then and he said, "You know what's beautiful about the character is it intrigues you to ask more question about the culture you come from." And fortunately for me, I got an A in that class. So that's how it was born. And I think the result of that, after 5 seasons of that show, we were able to at least archive our culture through that slice of community that me and you know does not exist like they are right now anymore.
Yes. Just on the topic of the burger, if you can explain to people listening, what is this? I mean, they saw it in the animations, but in your words.
Okay, so the burger in general is actually not native to our land. So it's nothing to do with any Gulf country. The burger actually is something that was an invention in India. So because of the trade route that we have with India, that's something that was adapted by our women, and not because they had to hide themselves. The heat in the country actually required that they wear something that actually accentuated their eyes in a beautiful way. The way the burqa was cut is actually not to hide the face. Otherwise, you'll wear a niqab, which is very simple. Just go black. And then, but this is something that actually accentuated their eyes. And in our culture, how we like really love saying poetry about the eyes and all of that. And this is the age in like pre-makeup age. So it was all about going like accentuating your eyes, being very some people also want to go to the market and they don't want to be known, like incognito kind of thing. And actually, it's not even made out of iron, because this is what my teacher said. "Oh, this is so heavy." I was like, "No, it's not heavy. It's actually made out of paper, golden paper." So, in many ways, um, the mask was something that helped these women in many ways, beauty wise, being kind of incognito in a way. And lastly, as you know, this trend has died.
Yes, yes. So, talking about poems and poetry and how the Arabs, they are intangible history of storytelling and of poetry, and especially in describing beauty, I will lead on to Dorian and Gabby, who've created this wonderful book, A Million Mile Stare, an adult coloring book with a collective of poetry. So I will hand it over to Dorian and Gabby to explain more.
Yeah, so basically, I'm more known as a performance poet, which we call spoken word. And when I moved here to the UAE, I was just blown away that there were like poetry TV channels, in Arabic And that was so beautiful because I had about a 15-year history in poetry and what we call spoken word in America. So when I moved here, I was able to just basically continue the open mics that I did in America. And it was a big adoption from the community as Arab expatriates and locals like the poetry, and also the Western expatriates like what we were used to in America. And from a writing background, I more so wrote for the stage. And that's a big difference between writing for stage and page. Page is kind of like this respected medium for crafting your words. On stage, a lot of times you can get away with rhyming to entertain the crowd. And sometimes that does not translate well to page. So about 15 years ago, my sister helped me illustrate a book, but it was more so my performance poems kind of transcripted on paper. And I wasn't really proud to read the work, although if you listen to it, it may sound better. So this time around, I wanted to work on a collection to show my growth as an artist on page. And so that was kind of the impetus or the inspiration behind the book. And I wanted to reconnect with my sister again, right? Because you get a discount, you know, so no, I'm joking.
Yeah, so he reached out to me and said, do you want to illustrate another poetry book? And at the time, this is a 4-year project. So this is, and a lot had to do with the distance and just, you know, our lives. And he became a parent during that time. I was running a business and freelancing at that time. So it was kind of like our little passion project on the side whenever we had time to work on it. And poems came in and out, but the popularity of adult coloring books was really surging when he got this idea. So he was like, instead of, you know, fully illustrating it like with color illustrations, what if we kind of play off of this interest in adult coloring books and we have line work? And it was right in line with other things, in line, pun intended, with some other types of illustration. I was moving a lot more into digital art at that time instead of hand illustrating a lot of things. So it was like right in line with like the things I was working on with the other clients. And so I was like, I think this is a great idea. And I don't think it's been done before. So we're just going to create a whole new genre. And I was like, we can make all the rules because we're the first ones doing it that I knew of. So we tried to research it and nobody else was doing it. And it just seemed like a great idea.
It's fantastic. Are we going to share some images? And Dorian, are you going to share with us maybe a performance?
Sure.
Wow.
This is for a poem called To Kill a Mourning Dove, which is a play on To Kill a Mockingbird, which I'm sure you all know of. And my sister actually did an illustration on the right. So this is what you would see if you purchased the book, a black and white illustration. And I really challenged her, since it's an adult coloring book, to not only let the corresponding illustrations kind of emotionally connect with the poem and hopefully the participant or the viewer of the book, but I also wanted to be somewhat challenging to color. So Gabby, how long did it take you to color that one?
I would say a few hours, probably two hours at least. This is colored pencil. This is filling with colored pencil. So a lot of thought went into, you know, what color is this blade of grass, and, you know, how will this look when it's finished? So I kind of switched between about 3 colors for the background, and then I just did some shading. It was really important to me that people weren't intimidated by the illustrations that I did. And so there's some easier ones in there. So it would be for all skill levels. So I felt like, you know, maybe a younger adult or somebody who's new to adult coloring books. I wanted the shapes to be simple enough. I mean, you could just use one color and kind of shade in this whole background and it would still read as grass because you have all the outlines. But for somebody a little bit more skilled, you have this open wing area, but you can do shading like I did. And so it kind of, for me, it's good for all ages and skill levels. So that was really important to me, to make it somewhat complicated and challenging in some of the illustrations. And then if you were to buy the book and see, there's some much easier ones that are just like a smaller object kind of floating on the white page. So it's not so time consuming.
And so just to give you a brief description of the image you see here, we have a butterfly, which is perched on a bird, which seems like it may be passed out or deceased, laying on top of the grass. So now I'll just read a short excerpt from this poem called To Kill a Mourning Dove. My mom thinks of her mother as a boucle-winged butterfly, a patch of God's garment, which must have ripped as he was creating the heavens or the earth. The other day, one paper clipped itself to her windshield wiper blade, a sticky note from her mother written right there. What the message said, she never divulged. I listened to her story, slightly jealous because I have yet to find my symbol, or maybe I've already killed that sign of mine.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dorian. And just for everyone listening in that's joined us, we are going to be sharing a link in the comment box with that you can download the artwork so you could color it in yourself. And we would really appreciate it if viewers that want to participate in that could share on social media and tag at Smithsonian Folklife, and also use the hashtag 2021 Folklife. So we would love to see different versions of how the viewers might color in these coloring books. And by the way, guys, I think it's such an innovative idea and a personal take on. I mean, these poems, I'm sure, Dorian, are a collective for over the last 10 years, or was this recent?
You know, it's interesting. I would say a lifetime. I've written these over, I'll say, the past 10 years, but it really was a big step I had to take personally to feel comfortable in divulging this type of personal material. A lot of friends, when I was more so in the performance world of participating in slam competitions, people always would say, you know, I wish I thought about that title, or why didn't I write a poem about that topic? But those same friends would say, but we don't really know about you, Dorian. And it would always be something under my skin. Like, I realized that I wasn't really comfortable talking about my childhood. And it's an interesting conversation because my sister and I sometimes go back and forth like, did you really suffer like neglect and abandonment in your childhood? Because her experience may not have been the same as mine. So it's also been like a cathartic experience as siblings.
Therapeutic, yeah.
Be able to just give appreciation and a safe space for each other to share some things that we may have experienced differently. And we hope that resonates with the viewer of the book as well, that they may connect to their own childhood.
And the cover, a beautiful cover of a young, African-American lady with this vibrant dress with the green flowers and the sky behind her. What was the choice of the cover, by the way?
Okay. So,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
You can go ahead.
Okay. So it's funny because I was asking him what the cover image would be, and I assumed we were going to choose some artwork that went with a poem from the inside of the book. And he dug through some old archives or looked on my website. I'm not sure where he found it, but I had done a similar image, or the original image for this was a hand-drawn illustration in pastels or colored pencil from like high school or college. And he was like, I want to use this. And I was like, well, we can't use it in this state because it's hand-drawn and it doesn't really fit the feel of the rest of the book. And I feel like if I digitize it and draw it over in the style that we did the book, then I would feel more comfortable with it. So I did that and he was like, love it. So there's no poem that actually goes with that particular, like there's no Million Mile Stare poem, but the art in this gaze that she has, and Dorian, maybe you can explain where you came up with that name. So it fit. He was like, I love it. I love the way she's looking off in the distance. And I think it just, it goes so well with what I want to entitle the book. And it just worked well. So it's kind of like a revamping of an old piece of art.
And just briefly add, I realized as I was trying to write some of this work from childhood that some of this inner angst and turmoil came up growing up as a multiracial child in South Georgia in America. So there was some racism that we dealt with. I don't know if my sister dealt with it as much, but I was called the N-word by some white kids, and Black kids would call me white boy. So I was very much in between, and I felt like that contributed to some of my issues that I dealt with emotionally, feeling left out and kind of abandoned emotionally from my father, who I'm very close with today. But these were some of the things I experienced in childhood. And so while doing the book, I came across a Wikipedia post about the 1,000-yard stare. which is like a military term used to describe a soldier kind of shell-shocked in combat. And I said, wow, what if the experience or traumatic experiences of children could be called the million mile stare? So I guess it was kind of a play on that concept. And that's how the book started to develop.
Wow, it's fantastic. And since we're talking about the process, we didn't really get into it with you, Mohammed, when you're talking about the process of creating an animation. I mean, this would lead me into the next question for both, for everyone on the panel, about the choice of your format. I mean, why did you choose the format of an animation that was, you know, like high, let's say, technically very high end, the way you did your animation? I mean, you could have done a flip book, it could have been a storyboard, it could have been a comic. I mean, the stories are all valid, right? So you chose to do, so you chose to do an animation, but why?
Because I believe the animation format lives forever. That's number one. The movie format has a certain kind of bracket of life shelf, but I remember that what shapes us when we are kids is our animation or the animation we see. We get very influenced when we are very, very young. When we see these kind of shows. And the other issue I had, which was more of a technical issue, I could not find 4 old grandmothers, technically, to act in a series. So I had to switch to animation, and the 4 grandmothers that I have in my show, 3 of them are guys, and 1 of them is a girl. So it's like Bart Simpson and all of those. So I felt like in a phase where I can create my own world. With animation, you can actually really do not have to stick with whatever is around you. You can make what you want to make, and that gave me a lot of freedom. And I'm very happy with the result because you know, beyond the first 2 episodes of Reach, where people were like complaining, it's like why are the grandmothers guys and blah blah blah, you know. And you know what, it eases out, and I'm happy that now I have kind of this kind of brand that people love, where I can control every aspect of the production. The one thing I hate when you are in the animation business is, and I directed 2 movies after that, live action movies, where I had to give the actors their space. The beauty about animation is actually you can control every single figment and aspect of what you are doing. You want the mosquito to do this, you have to sketch the mosquito, you have to draw the mosquito, you have to model mosquito, you have to texture the mosquito, you have to rig the mosquito, and the mosquito then shows up for 2 seconds. And but the issue is like it's a production element, regardless if it's a dinosaur or a mosquito. Like you have to give that the same attention. And I love that so much about creating Fridge. And as season progressed, the characters matured, and I matured as the director, and I knew like they became very close to my heart. That I know, I had once a complaint from one of my characters, Saloom, which is the character who speaks the least. And I was like, why am I not like featured in the episode as I should be? I was like, the beauty about you, I answered the character. I said, the beauty about you is in your silence. Because when you say something, it becomes uber important. And we moved on. But the process is very different than any process I have been in. And I have been in many. Yeah, I've been lucky to be doing like events, feature films, theater, and all of that. But I have to say, my roots are firmly in the animation soil.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mohammed. Dorian and Gabby, you explained a bit about the coloring book and how you came up with the idea of it. But how do you find that it engages with your viewers? Like, the people that are buying the book, how are they engaging with it? What's the response? How are you receiving the engagement? I mean, Muhammad was saying that, you know, he receives like a complaint from the character, or he gets feedback now via social media, because even though the seasons have stopped, I mean, the show continues to be played and replayed and translated into many different languages. In your case, the language is English, and it's an adult coloring book, but would you say it's limited to adults?
Gabby, do you want to answer that?
So, I mean, I'll let Dorian speak on, you know, his poetry. We felt that we just didn't want to be mislead. Some of the subject matter, there's not like a lot of inappropriateness. There's no profanity in the poems, but we felt some of the subject matter deals with very adult subjects, and we wanted to make it very clear that this was not appropriate to give to a 5-year-old to color. Like, people see coloring books and you assume it's for a child. So we really wanted to make it clear that it was for adults. And some of the art is very intricate and would probably frustrate a child with a crayon. But we both agreed, and it was very important for us, for the buyer, our customer, our reader, they're the third party, and this is a collaboration with them. And so that was very important for us to feel, you know, not as an audience viewing it, but the process of reading the poem and coloring, which is a slow process, would hopefully be cathartic and just cause them to be, you know, just insightful, and like, what do these words mean to me? How does this feel? Maybe I relate to it. Maybe, wow, this is a new perspective. I didn't know people, or maybe I know Dorian or Gabby growing up. Is this how they felt? Like, we never knew that this is how they were internalizing the experiences that we had. We had a very unique upbringing, moving from inner city Cleveland, and I was 10, he was 8, and we moved to a very small town, in not rural, but very small kind of town in Georgia, and there was no other, biracial children that we know of when we moved there. So people were looking at us like, what are you? Where did you come from? And we talked weird, and we said pop instead of soda, and yeah. So we really struggled to find our place, and what friend groups were we going to relate to, and and Dorian played sports, but I very much kept to myself. And so we just had very different experiences, which as adults we can discuss now, but it's just interesting how we lived in the same house with the same parents and just experience life in our childhood in a different way.
Yeah, so to chime in, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead, Dorian.
So just to chime in and add to that is that accepting that challenge from other poetry friends of mine that said, we want to know more about you. I ran away from that for 10 years. And, as poetry started coming out of me, as I tried to delve deeper into my childhood and some of the reasons I was not trying to address my youth. And we all know as adults that your youth shapes you, right? How you view the world, how you look at safety, protection, guarding your, through all the incidents you experienced as a child. So it was a cathartic experience to share, develop these poems and collaborate with my sister. And this picture works, or this doesn't resonate. And, we really put a lot of work into crafting it. And we hope that through the coloring medium that people can now, as they're reading the book, they may, start meditating or zoning out while they're coloring. And maybe if I'm talking about the 1980s, someone starts flashing back and starts remembering their childhood. So that's a big goal of it. And we felt that coloring and poetry kind of married together would be the best medium to kind of evoke those emotions and feelings from childhood for others as well.
I just wanted to say it's really interesting hearing you all speak, because, at the end, the core creative driver behind everything that you've been talking about is your childhood. Like Muhammad was speaking about the cartoons that he watched and how he didn't know what sushi was, and how culture is transformed through media and obviously animation or illustrations or stories, storybooks or illustrative storybooks, or even with the adult coloring book, and both of you have that in common. And not only that, I think there's an interesting also exchange that Muhammad was studied in Boston and lived in the States, and Dorian left the States and lives in Abu Dhabi, And of course, Gabby, you're over there in the US. I hope you can visit us soon once the pandemic is over. But I just wanted to maybe let you reflect on those experiences of being in the States, Muhammad, and then, you know, being here, and how did that influence your practice? And then vice versa, the question goes for Dorian and Gabby, if you have anything to say as well. So Muhammad.
Well, I have to say I am a late bloomer. So up until finishing my time in the States, I didn't even graduate, by the way. I was a high school graduate and I went to the States. I studied general arts and animation, and I actually I was like really like I attended Harvard at one spot, but then and then 9/11 happened, and I had to leave the country. So unfortunately, in our system in the country, if you leave with no degree, then you're a high school degree graduate. But what gave me hope is like I was very like confident that I have the tools, and the tools were the programs like Adobe, Illustrator, Photoshop. Can you communicate a story through that? And I think I had that, but honestly, I even then I never thought that that will even translate to anything. Um, but you know, life changes and things happen, and here we are. And I'm happy that there are two kinds of people. They are the people who are educational and the people who have بالعربي يعني أصحاب صنعة. I don't
The
know
craft makers and the people that
and the
are academics. Yeah,
I am the crafters from the crafter side. So in the end, I have to say like my journey has been very blessed with very special moments where I met special people at the right time to make my not even me making my own vision. They encouraged me to do my vision. They were like, you know what? We don't even have an Arabic cartoon. Can you make one? And I was like, can you give me the chance to make one? And since then, and that was 15 years ago. Since then, can we do something special? And I said, yes, leave it with me. And I did not know 2 cents about what I'm talking about. But we here we are chatting with you guys. So I think it's
wonderful. Dorian, and you moved from the States. I mean, I remember when you first got here, and obviously, I don't know, for those who don't know, also Dorian is an academic as well. He teaches here in the UAE, and I wonder.
Where do you teach, Dorian?
I teach in Al Dhafra in the government schools.
Nice.
High school, yes. Yeah, so Noor, I would say that I think indirectly, or maybe in Allah's divine vision, I think experiencing some of that discrimination as a child and not fitting in, that was kind of the bulk of my bullying. You know, it was when Michael Jackson came out with the Black or White song, are you black or white? You know, kids would come up to me and start singing that at the school, and I'm like, what do you mean? I don't even know what that means. You know, so I think being discriminated against for being different, I think that kind of prepared me when I was ready to move to the UAE. You have to have a certain cultural sensitivity and appreciation of all cultures, of all people. And that was a part of our training when we moved here. And when I did, surprisingly, a lot of people thought I was Muslim and Arab because of my appearance. So I actually felt more accepted in the UAE than when I was growing up as a child. So the UAE is a very accepting place. It totally changed my trajectory of my, you know, as you know, I'm an arts and culture organizer with Rooftop Rhythms. And so just moving out here, I kind of came at the right time when poetry was evolving and people wanted more cultural content here when I came in 2011.
But Dorian, if you come to the UAE and you've been here for a while, you know we celebrate Gray.
Celebrate what?
Gray.
Great. Yes.
Like no black, no white. We are like mid-man, and we are like happy to celebrate anyone.
And you know what? I agree with that. So I felt very accepted here, and you know, I went from kind of a events organizer, kind of in the community. I did have a professional background in America, but when I moved here, it just went to the next level. And thanks to my relationship with Noor, we did something at Louvre Abu Dhabi in 2018. I have ongoing partnerships with, the Art Center at NYU Abu Dhabi, who's a great partner of mine. And we've worked with so many entities, including official support from U.S. Embassy Abu Dhabi. So I think moving here, there's just so much opportunity for people who have, humility and a vision. And I'm just thankful to have moved here when I did, and honored to be here with you all today.
Noor, Noor, I have been the director of the UAE Pavilion for Expo for 9 months. So, yeah, it keeps shifting, but that's not the message. The message I want to say is like, we were in a workshop where they used to tell us, what is the 5 things that define us as Emiratis? One of them was tolerance. One of them was acceptance. One of them was we are who we are because not of us, because of all of us. So it was, if I'm saying something to Dorian and Gabrielle, if she visits the country one day, it's like we're a country that is 20% minority, 80% based on the vision of those people. And that's why we are who we are, and that's why we excel.
Fantastic. No, the conversation is so interesting, but we are limited with time as well. But for the last round, I wanted to just highlight about the poem, very personal poem, Dorian and Gabby, you have about your grandmother with Alzheimer's. And I think it's interesting, Mohammed, also, one of your characters has Alzheimer's.
Yes, and my one of my character has Alzheimer's. I think I have it, but my grandmother passed away from Alzheimer's, and it's not a nice thing to see a person fade away like that. But I hope one day we have a cure. Until then, let's celebrate their life, not their suffering.
Yeah. And on that,
we found that ironic because our grandmother also passed away from Alzheimer's.
Mine too.
Yeah, sorry to hear that, Muhammad Harib. And so that I think we have some commonality in our work, Noor, that you're about to reference about that.
Yeah, I think that we'll show the piece, and if you, Dorian, would like to end this conversation before we go to Q&A, obviously. Okay. Just end our internal conversation with the poem. I think that would be a nice way. Then we'll address, we have a few questions from the audience that are joining us. Thank you so much, everyone, for your comments as well. We've been receiving them during this time. And we'll put up the image, and you can recite the poem.
Okay, this poem is again called Cooking with Alzheimer's. And so basically, I tried to describe kind of a fragmented mind, or the fact that she's losing or going through this process of dementia. And just briefly, grandmothers are very important in American society, specifically with people of color. And so our grandmother was like a matriarch, as my father died of leukemia in the mid-1990s. And they think that it has a lot to do with the chemicals he was exposed to as a Black farmer in South Georgia. He actually got a settlement from the U.S. government. So since he passed in the 90s, she really carried the family on. And it was a big tradition of hers to basically, cook a big breakfast every morning, whether she had one person over there or not. And so this is a memory of mine and Gabby's of just remembering her cooking every morning. And so I'll read a short excerpt towards the end of the poem about this topic. That kitchen just isn't the same without her now. It smells stale and in need of being cordoned off. No one cooks there anymore. We only go there on holidays in hopes of smelling a memory of her tangled up in the plastic flowered print curtains and the dusty dull blade of the exhaust fan above the stove. Every now and then, the bravest of us tiptoes in there, turns on an eye of the stove on Max and watch it turn red, just long enough to pour libations and offer a blurred and fragmented prayer for her. And this is my sister's coloring of her own black and white illustration. And in this picture, you will see an elder woman cooking with kind of staring off, a million-mile stare out the window, and smoke kind of starting to plume from what she's forgetting on the stove. Thank you.
Wonderful, Dorian. That's fantastic. I think we'll go into the Q&A. I have a first question is for Mohammed Harab. Let me just get it over here. All right. So can you name some of the cartoons or animations that most influenced you?
Okay, that's a very hard question. Some people are very very big manga ambassadors. I'm not a manga fan. I've seen some and I like some. I am more of the Pixar, Disney realm kind of school, and I've seen few. The first one that actually really touched me, when I was grown up, when I was in the university, is a movie called The Iron Giant. I don't know if you guys saw it, and it hit me like here. And recently, I went to see Raya, which is the Raya the Last Dragon. I had no expectations for this film. I thought it was actually lame before I went in. I ended up leaving the movie crying for half an hour.
Wow.
Not because of the movie, but there was one of those acts that really hit me here. So it really depends. That's the beauty of movies. Movies are something for everyone else. It's like we're not like one kind of audience that we can react to the same scenes. Some scenes will be nice, some scenes will be but all I can say is Princess Mononoke is one of my biggest I love that movie a lot. Spirited Away, Up, Wally. Wally, I was in amazement. I loved Wally till they started talking. And then I lost Wally. No, seriously, because Wally was all about expressionism. You know what is expressionism? When you say something without talking.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think if we can put the image back up that we had of Farid and share it one more time. So in this image, you can see the main characters, the four grandmothers in their traditional dress, the burqa that we spoke about earlier, traditional face
the
mask,
bunker.
and the polka dot dresses and their traditional seating area in basically what looks like the living room of one of the characters.
Let me explain for you, Noor, what is the setting for people who don't know what it is, just to give you some insight. So this is the time for AC. So they have the fan, and she celebrates her husband, and her husband is hanged there on the wall. She is a person who does not believe in digital media. She has a radio and her old phone. And the thing you see on the ultimate right is where old ladies put their clothes so they can put some bukhur.
The incense. The incense. So they burn the incense and they put it under so that the dress doesn't burn. They have this basically it's a part of the furnishings that they then can display their head scarves and their dresses.
And the seating that they are in is a local seating.
Yeah, that's the on the floor, the traditional local seating. Mohammed, there's another question for you about what stories about life in the UAE do you still want to share?
Okay, I have two stories that I would love to produce. One of them is called Duais. You know that?
Yeah, maybe explain it.
No, but you don't know. She's an urban legend. She's one of those characters that in our stories she is wielding يسمونه هذا الشيء like a knife.
A hook.
A hook, yes. But her story is much deeper than that. She is much more romantic than that. And I got to find out because I went to visit the historical site and I realized she was a victim of the circumstances. So I would love to tell her true story from my perspective. And the other thing I want to do is like something to do with Osha Shahar, which is our favorite ultimate female poet. I don't know, I have a leniency to go like towards like celebrating women's story.
Nice.
And yeah, because you know the guys are always the guys. I know the guys, but I want to celebrate the women in our history, really.
It's fantastic, Muhammad. Just to one more question for Dorian and Gabby, and then I'm going to wrap up. So the question for Gabby and Dorian are, how has your efforts on this collaboration project inspired future separate or united projects? And that's what I was going to ask you. What's next?
Gabby?
Well, like I said earlier, I think we've really kind of accidentally stumbled upon a new genre of book. So the book is available on Amazon, and when we were choosing categories, I'm like, there's no category for what we've done. So I put it in poetry. You could choose like 3 categories. I put it in poetry, and I put it in adult coloring books or books for adults. So yeah, I feel like, I think we got to do it again, right, Dorian? You working on some new poems?
Definitely, we're going to work out the agreement right here. I would say that it's led me to think about more youth-centered projects. So sometimes when I try to release my own hip hop or poetry, I get a feeling like Dorian's in his 30s. We don't want to hear from him anymore. I'm exaggerating, but sometimes it doesn't have the effect that I think it will when I put it on social media, because I think the younger people are caught up in what the younger people are doing. So I'm kind of like in that middle age. So I thought it would be powerful to have a poetry album of children or youth performing my poetry, and call it Out of the Mouths, which is a biblical reference about, and I've researched that Islam also puts a lot of importance and focus on youth and how connected to God or higher powers they are. So I thought it'd be powerful to kind of activate the youth more. So since I'm just discovering a lot more about youth, I'm just thinking about maybe Rooftop Rhythms, which is our poetry show. Maybe we can have a youth-led version of the show. So I'm just excited and thinking more about youth, and also continuing to just knocking out a 4-year project gives you the motivation to say, you know what, I can do that other book I wanted to do, or I have a novel in mind, or I want to curate a project. And I'm just thankful that we were able to release this project and get great constructive critique so that we can continue to just build upon this. So thank you, SP, for that question, our friend SP.
Yeah, and I'm also currently working on illustrating 2 children's books for other authors. And I'm planning to, it's my goal to release my own coloring book for children by the end of the year.
Fantastic.
Copycat.
Mohammed, what about Fareed? Is there anything that you want to share in the future? Any news? That's a beautiful image of old Dubai and new Dubai, like you said about creating.
Unfortunately, I'm bound with contracts, but Fridge was that was not the last hurrah for Fridge, and Fridge is coming soon to a bigger screen.
Oh, that's interesting. Thanks for the scoop.
I did not say that.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'll have to wrap up. This has been amazing. We're at 50 minutes and we've gone a bit over time, but thanks to all of you for sharing such heartfelt stories. Thank you to the audience for their comments and questions. This session was part of the festival program, United Arab Emirates Living Landscapes, Living Memories, which is supported by the UAE Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the UAE Ministry of Culture, and also the UAE Embassy in Washington, D.C.
Noor, I want to thank everyone who's sending us messages because they're like popping up in my face. I just want to say to everyone who is now reacting to this, they're just like, it's like a boatload of thanks. And I just want to say thank you.
Thanks. And we just want to thank also everyone behind the scenes. I'm going to hopefully pronounce everyone's name correctly, but Elisa Hoff, Zara Ruffman, Jenny Mycock, Diana Newton, Alex Taggart, Pablo Moreno Martinez, Dylan Skidor, Asia Ball, Rebecca Fenton, Michelle Bambling, Sabrina Lynn Motley for their production, promotion, and administrative efforts. Thank you all. You can find out more about Smithsonian Folklife events on the Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.